The restaurant was quiet that evening. The usual rush had long passed, leaving only a few scattered tables with tired-looking customers. The waitress moved between them with practiced ease, carrying plates of food, refilling drinks, and offering polite smiles. She had worked here for years, and everyone knew her as dependable and gentle, but no one knew much else about her life. She had a way of blending into the background, quietly doing her job without drawing attention. She wiped down a table in the corner, noticing an old piano tucked against the wall. It was slightly worn, with chipped keys and a dull finish, clearly not used often. Most nights, no one even looked at it, and she herself had only ever played it a few times when she was a child. Music had once been a part of her life that had faded into the background along with her other dreams. That night, a man sitting at a nearby table noticed the piano and called the waitress over. "Can anyone play that?" he asked, gesturing to the instrument. "I'd love to hear something simple while I eat." She hesitated, her hands frozen in the air for a moment. The idea of playing in front of strangers made her heart pound. She hadn't played in years. Her fingers remembered some notes, yes, but she wasn't sure if she could even manage a simple tune. She smiled nervously and said, "I could try. Just something simple, though. I haven't played in a long time." He nodded encouragingly, and soon the other customers were curious as well. No one expected much. It was, after all, just a casual request. She walked over to the piano, her steps light but cautious. Sitting on the bench, she took a deep breath and let her fingers hover above the keys. The first note sounded soft and uncertain, barely filling the room. She closed her eyes and tried to remember the simple melodies she had once loved at first. The music was timid, almost fragile, like a small candle flickering in the dark. She played a simple tune, and the room remained calm, with a few people glancing toward her out of mild curiosity. She had intended to keep it simple, but as the notes flowed, something unexpected happened. Her fingers began to move more confidently. She let her emotions guide her. Memories of past moments, both joyful and sorrowful, started to spill into the music. The simple tune began to change, almost without her realizing it. The soft melody grew richer, deeper, and more complex. Her hands moved faster now, but gracefully, weaving patterns across the keys. Each note carried a piece of her story, her struggles, her quiet hopes, and her long-suppressed dreams. The room slowly began to change too. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks paused halfway to mouths, and eyes turned toward the piano. People sensed something special was happening. The waitress focused entirely on the music, barely noticed the attention. Her heart was beating, but she didn't let it control her. The piano seemed to take over, as if it knew the story she wanted to tell. Every chord and note carried a kind of emotion that could not be put into words. Some listeners leaned forward, trying to catch every nuance, while others closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. It was as if the room had become another world, one where only the piano and her feelings existed. A man in the corner, who had been quietly sipping his coffee, looked around in amazement. He had expected a simple, light tune, maybe something to pass the time while he ate. Instead, he found himself caught in a wave of sound that was both gentle and powerful. He could see the waitress moving with ease now, her posture relaxed, her fingers dancing over the keys with skill that seemed almost magical. He whispered to the person next to him, "I didn't know she could play like this." It wasn't just skill that captivated everyone, it was the emotion behind it. The music felt alive, telling a story that words could never fully capture. People who had come to the restaurant just to eat found themselves holding their breath, afraid to break the spell. Some smiled, some looked thoughtful, and others had tears quietly forming in their eyes. No one moved, no one spoke, except for the soft, haunting notes filling the room. As she played, memories of her past came flooding back. She remembered the lessons she had taken as a child, long hours practicing when she thought she could become a professional musician. She remembered the dreams that life had slowly pushed aside, dreams of performing on stage, of composing music that touched people. Life had not been kind. Responsibilities, bills, and endless shifts had swallowed those aspirations. And yet here she was, standing quietly in a small restaurant. Her heart and soul poured out through her fingertips. A young couple sitting near the back of the room exchanged glances. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The music said everything. They felt something shift inside them, a sudden connection to a feeling they had forgotten existed, pure wonder. The piano, old and overlooked, became the center of the universe for those few minutes. Her playing shifted again, this time more dramatic and fiery. She added a sudden burst of energy, a pattern of notes that soared and tumbled, rising and falling like waves. She felt the power of the music vibrating through her own body, each chord making her heart beat faster. People instinctively leaned in, drawn closer to the source of the sound. A waiter from another table paused in his work, mesmerized by the transformation of what had begun as a simple tune. The change in atmosphere was remarkable. The restaurant, once quiet and slightly dull, had become alive with emotion. Even the background noises, the clinking of dishes, the soft hum of conversation faded into silence as the music took over completely. Some guests held hands, others closed their eyes, and a few simply stared at the waitress with disbelief. They couldn't understand how someone who had seemed so ordinary could create something so extraordinary. She didn't stop. She played with everything she had, letting each note carry a piece of her story. She didn't think about how she would feel afterward, or how people would react. She only thought about the music, letting it flow naturally, letting it speak for her. For the first time in years, she felt free. For the first time in years, she felt alive in a way that nothing else had allowed. Minutes passed, though no one could tell how many. The music continued to rise and fall, to dance and whisper, until it slowly began to calm. Her fingers lingered on the final keys, letting the last note resonate through the room. She opened her eyes, slightly trembling, uncertain of what had just happened. She had intended to play a simple tune, but what emerged was far beyond her imagination. The room remained silent for a moment, stunned by what they had just witnessed. Then, one by one, people began to clap. At first softly, then louder, until the entire restaurant erupted in applause. Some guests stood, cheering and clapping, unable to contain their amazement. A few even wiped tears from their eyes. The waitress rose from the piano, her face flushed and her hands slightly shaking, feeling a mixture of relief, surprise, and deep emotion. A man approached her, his eyes wide with admiration. "I don't know how you did that," he said, his voice filled with awe. I didn't expect that at all." Others nodded, murmuring their agreement. They had come for a quiet dinner and a small tune, but they had witnessed something extraordinary. She smiled shyly, trying to hide the emotion she felt inside. I just played what I felt," she said quietly. "I didn't plan anything." But even she knew that something had changed. That night had reminded her of the part of herself she had almost forgotten. The part that loved music, that loved to create, that could speak without words through the piano. The customers stayed for a while longer, reluctant to leave, still talking about the performance. They asked questions, praised her skill, and some even begged her to play another song. She laughed softly, touched by the warmth and encouragement. But she knew that one night like this could not erase years of quiet living. Yet it had awakened something in her, a spark she thought had long died. As the evening came to a close, she returned to her usual duties, clearing tables and refilling drinks, but she walked a little taller. Something inside her had shifted. The old piano, the quiet restaurant, and the simple request of a customer had given her a moment of magic she would never forget. And though the world outside would continue as usual, she had reminded herself that her music, her talent, and her dreams were still alive, waiting for the right moment to shine again. By the time the last guest left, the memory of the music lingered in the air. The restaurant seemed warmer, brighter, almost different. The waitress cleaned up the piano carefully, running her fingers over the keys once more, feeling the echoes of what she had just created. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt hope. Hope that the music inside her had a place in the world, that perhaps someday it could be heard by many more. That night ended quietly, but the seed of something new had been planted. A single evening, a simple request, and the courage to play had turned an ordinary night into a memory that would stay with everyone who was there. And in that quiet restaurant, Under the dim lights and behind the worn counters, the waitress had reminded herself that sometimes life's most beautiful moments come when we dare to share the gifts we think we have lost. The applause still echoed in the small restaurant even after the last note faded. The waitress stood by the piano, her hands resting lightly on the keys, feeling the lingering vibrations in her fingers. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the rush of emotions inside her. Her heart was still racing, her mind still reeling from the sudden wave of attention. She had only meant to play a simple tune, but what had poured out of her was something far greater. The customers who had been there that night lingered for a while, talking in low voices, still amazed. They looked at her with new eyes, as if they were seeing her for the first time. One of the older guests, who had been quietly watching the entire performance, approached her with a warm smile. "I have to ask," he said, "how is it that someone with this talent has been working here quietly all these years?" The question made her pause. She looked down at her hands, feeling a mix of pride and vulnerability. She had never thought much about it before, never tried to show the world what she could do. Life had been busy and difficult, filled with work, bills, and responsibilities. Music had always been her first love, but she had pushed it aside, thinking it was a luxury she could no longer afford. "I don't know," she said softly. "I've always loved it, but life got in the way. I never thought anyone would notice." She smiled shyly, unsure how to explain the flood of emotions she had felt while playing. Her words only made the customers more curious. They asked questions, praised her skill, and encouraged her to share more of her music. Some even suggested that she should perform somewhere bigger, where more people could hear her. The idea seemed overwhelming, almost impossible, but also exciting. For the first time in years, she felt that a door she thought was closed might actually be opening. One of the guests, who had been quietly filming the performance on his phone, asked if he could share the video online. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if she wanted her private moment to become public. But then she thought about how far she had come to play that night, and she nodded. "If it can inspire someone, then yes," she said. The next morning, she woke to find her phone buzzing constantly. Notifications from social media, messages from friends, and emails from strangers filled her screen. The video had gone viral overnight. People from all over the world were talking about her performance, amazed that such talent had been hidden for so long. Musicians, music teachers, and enthusiasts praised her skill and emotion. Some even asked to collaborate, while others offered opportunities to perform in concerts and events. She sat at her small kitchen table, staring at the screen, feeling a mixture of disbelief and excitement. For so long, she had lived quietly, believing her music was only for herself. Now, the world seemed to be opening up, inviting her to step into a place she had dreamed about but never dared to reach. Her colleagues at the restaurant were equally amazed. They had always known she was quiet and talented in her own way, but none of them had ever imagined that she could play the piano like that. They asked her to play again at work, and she did, each time feeling more confident and alive. Even the regular customers returned, hoping to hear her play. The atmosphere in the restaurant changed. It became warmer, more vibrant, as if the music had breathed life into the walls themselves. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Invitations to perform at local events, small concerts, and community gatherings began to arrive. She accepted a few, careful to pace herself, but each performance reminded her of the joy and freedom she felt at the piano. She began practicing again every day, rediscovering the techniques she had once known and exploring new ways to express herself. The more she played, the more her confidence grew. She realized that her talent had never truly left her. It had simply been waiting for the right moment to return. Each note she played carried her story, her struggles, and her hopes. The audience could feel it, and that connection, that shared emotion, is what made her music so powerful. One evening, she was invited to play at a small music festival in the city. The stage was simple, but the crowd was large, and the energy was different from the quiet restaurant. She felt nervous, but the memory of that first night gave her courage. As she sat at the piano and placed her hands on the keys, she felt the familiar rush of emotions. She closed her eyes and let the music flow just as she had done before. The audience was captivated. Some swayed with the rhythm, Others closed their eyes, letting the music carry them away. When she finished, the applause was thunderous, and she realized that her life had changed. The waitress who had once blended into the background was now a musician who could touch hearts and inspire people. The dream she had almost given up on was alive. It was bigger than she had ever imagined. Despite the sudden attention, she remained humble. She knew that her journey was just beginning, and that the work, the practice, and the dedication were what had brought her to this point. She also knew that life's challenges would continue, but now she had something to hold on to: her music, her passion, and the courage to share it with the world. Friends and strangers alike reached out to her, sharing their own stories of lost dreams, struggles, and hope. Many said her music reminded them that it was never too late to follow what they loved, to rediscover what they had set aside. She realized that her music was not just for herself. It was for everyone who had ever felt small, unnoticed, or afraid to show their talent. She continued to work at the restaurant for a while, but things were different now. Customers came not only for the food but also for the music. Some left generous tips, some brought gifts, and many simply stayed to listen. Her colleagues were proud of her. The restaurant itself gained a new reputation as a place where something magical could happen. The waitress began to see opportunities she had never imagined. She was invited to teach piano lessons, to compose music for small projects, and to perform at local events. Each opportunity was a new challenge, a new step toward the life she had dreamed of as a child. She approached each one with humility and determination, knowing that talent alone was not enough, required hard work, patience, and persistence. Through it all, she never forgot that first night. She remembered the nervousness, the hesitation, and the moment when the simple tune she intended to play transformed into something extraordinary. That night had been a turning point, a reminder that courage and passion could change everything. She often thought about the customers who had been there, their faces filled with surprise and wonder, and she felt grateful that her music had reached them in that way. Months passed, and she grew into her new life as both a waitress and a musician. She balanced work, practice, and performances, learning to manage her time and energy. Each day brought new experiences, new challenges, and new joys. She felt alive in a way she had never known before, and she cherished every moment. Her story inspired others too. People who had watched the video online shared it with friends and family, telling them about the waitress who had hidden her talent for years. Some were motivated to pick up old dreams they had set aside. Others simply smiled, remembering that life could hold unexpected surprises. She received messages from people of all ages, thanking her for showing that it was never too late to embrace one's passion. One evening, after a long day of work, she sat at the piano in the restaurant, playing a quiet, gentle tune. The room was empty, except for a few lingering customers, but she didn't mind. She played for herself, for the memories, and for the music itself. She realized that no matter where life took her, the piano would always be a part of her, a way to express what words could not. Looking back, she understood that everything had changed in a single night. A simple request, a quiet decision to play, and a moment of courage had set her life on a new path. She had rediscovered her love for music, and in doing so, had rediscovered herself. She knew that there would be more challenges ahead, but she no longer feared them. She had learned that her talent and her heart were enough to carry her forward. The restaurant remained her base, her safe place, and her reminder of where she had started. But now, it was also a place of possibility, of dreams realized and shared. Each time she played, she felt the connection between her and the people around her, the connection that music could create. That beauty could inspire, and that courage could awaken. Her life continued to grow in ways she had never imagined. Invitations to perform in larger venues, collaborations with other musicians, and opportunities to record her own music began to arrive. She approached each new experience with the same mixture of humility and determination that had carried her through the first night. She remembered the silence before the applause, the awe in the room, and the feeling of touching something greater than herself through music. And through it all, she never stopped believing in the magic of that first moment. She never forgot the simple piano in the quiet restaurant, the nervous hesitation, and the sudden transformation that changed her life. It remained a symbol of hope, a reminder that hidden talents could shine when given the chance, and that dreams, no matter how long set aside, could always find a way back. The story of the waitress who played the piano spread beyond the restaurant, beyond the city, and even beyond the country. People told her story again and again, sharing it as an example of courage, talent, and the beauty of unexpected moments. She often thought about the faces of the people who had been there, their surprise, their joy, and their tears. She felt grateful for every single person who had witnessed her music, and she knew that her life had been forever changed by that simple act of courage. Now, whenever she sits at the piano, she plays not only for herself, but for everyone who has ever felt unnoticed, for everyone who has ever had a dream they thought was lost, and for everyone who believes that it is never too late to share their gift. She plays with love, with joy, and with the knowledge that sometimes the smallest decisions can create the most extraordinary moments. And so, her life continues, filled with music, opportunity, and hope. The waitress who once blended into the background has become a musician who inspires, who touches hearts, and who reminds everyone that talent, courage, and passion can transform even the quietest life into something unforgettable.